You're watching Public Comment, Sean O'Connor's video diary vlog focusing on politics, culture, and self. Hey guys, really quick, the elephant in the room. You can see my glasses here. Got this bit of tape on it. I hope that's not too jarring. The lens popped out, and so I had to do a quick fix. I'll be getting the glasses more fully fixed on Friday, so in a few days. But in the meantime, if I'm going to be able to read what it was I wanted to say to you, I need these glasses. In fact, if I'm to see it all, I really need these glasses. Anyway, I would say happy Memorial Day to y'all if Memorial Day was a happy holiday, but in fact, I know some folks out there do use the expression happy Memorial Day, perhaps thinking about how now summer is on its way. Kids are almost out of school. College is out unless you're taking summer classes. But in my opinion, it's actually quite inappropriate to say happy Memorial Day about a day that is in fact about something really quite inherently sad. I know I'm not the only one. If you Google the question online, is it inappropriate to say happy Memorial Day on Memorial Day, you would see that there are a number of people who share my point of view. Today we're supposed to reflect on our extremely courageous ladies and gentlemen who lost their lives as part of their service in our military. Yes, I think that Memorial Day is an extremely sad day indeed. And it makes me think about how there should never be such a thing as war. What a shame it is that political entities can go so mad that the only way for them to address the madness is through fighting. We are still fighting in Afghanistan, 18 years on now. The longest war our nation has ever fought, if we exclude our battles with Native Americans. Maybe we shouldn't. And I must ask, how much coverage does the war in Afghanistan receive these days? How many people remember throughout each day that in fact we are still fighting a war? I find myself obligated ethically to let the implications and ramifications of that word really sink into my soul, because people are really dying still every day. I want to let that awful word sink in. War. I will say it one more time. War. Aside from ensuring quality healthcare access to all and removing President Trump from office as a result of his plethora of crimes and abuses of power and abuses of the office of the presidency, I'm thinking that perhaps ending the war in Afghanistan ought to be considered a policy priority here. And I'm wondering why it doesn't appear from where I am to get treated as such. If it does get treated as such, I just don't know where the evidence of that is. So I'd hope that you would direct me to it and cheer me up. I do really want to spend a few minutes talking about the war in Afghanistan, out of respect for those who have fought there, who have lost their lives there, who have lost their loved ones there, who are without their loved ones today, in one respect or another, because of this utterly unfortunate war. I really think it is important to remind ourselves today. Our nation remains in this war with insufficient talk of bringing it to an end. I just found today, while I was doing a little bit of research on the war in Afghanistan, this section in the New York Times website that keeps a Afghan war casualty report. I feel awful and ashamed that I hadn't stumbled upon this before, and that I don't read it more often. So I was reading a recent post, and one particular article says this. I think it's worth sharing with you. On May 22nd, Ghazni province, 2 security forces and 2 civilians killed. 2 children and 2 members of the security forces were killed, and 12 people, 7 civilians and 5 members of the security forces, were wounded when a Humvee laden with explosives was hit by a rocket before reaching its target in Ghazni city. 4 suicide attackers inside the Humvee were also killed. The Taliban claimed responsibility for the attack. Of all things, of course, what is most striking here, right? Children. Children killed in war. And not just that day, but the day before and throughout the week. Such a thing, of course, I believe most of us would agree should not be. And I'm not a utopian, however, but doesn't it seem that in a world where we can do so many sophisticated, complex things on our tiny little smartphones, all these fancy apps, we can at least stop children from dying in war? And are we even winning this war? There was a sobering article published last week, May 21st, by the New York Times. The headline reads, "Attacks on Girls' Schools on the Rise." The article mentions how, quote, "On 2 successive nights, armed men on motorcycles set fire to 2 girls' schools just outside the Farah city, the provincial capital. Both were badly damaged, and the teaching materials inside were destroyed, ending classes indefinitely for nearly 1,700 girls," close quote. Now, between destroyed school records and traumatized girls and parents, their education has been severely disrupted. While some within the Taliban claim to condemn this, others don't. And while we're in the midst of so-called peace talks, it's really worth addressing the question, what exactly does real peace in Afghanistan look like? Certainly we don't want all of our fighting there, all the lives lost, all the children who have been killed, all the years, decades spent. We don't want it all to be in vain, right? I remember Ashley and I were watching an episode of Madam Secretary, and it depicted an agreement whereby the U.S. supported Afghan government had accepted a deal with the Taliban. The Taliban would agree to a democracy if the Afghan government would agree no women could participate in the legislature. And that, of course, raised the fundamental question that the episode addressed. Is such a compromise an acceptable one? What are we willing to give up? What do we consider a victory? I was enraged by that episode, actually. Perhaps more so than any episode of that show I've seen. I do understand that international politics is complex and severe in its difficulties, but I don't think democracy as such is enough of a fundamental political principle for a polity to develop itself upon. I think the Weimar Republic is a sounding proof of that. It's really a strange time for democracy, isn't it? How can we even pressure the Taliban to surrender to a certain kind of democracy when ours is so divided? Being put to the test by President Trump and his gang of obstructionist Republicans who seem hell-bent on accountability preventing accountability, blocking accountability from the executive branch, who seem to have surrendered their oversight responsibilities. Strangely, just around the time they stopped investigating Hillary Clinton for her failures in Benghazi. Not only does it sadden me then to see the war in Afghanistan linger into its 18th year on this Memorial Day, but that our commander-in-chief is so fundamentally corrupt. This is not giving me so much confidence in what may come of our efforts in Afghanistan. I do, however, have tremendous confidence in our ladies and gentlemen in our armed services. And I want to again reiterate my gratitude. And I want to say, I can't wait until we get you all home with your loved ones. Something else I have been up to, other than lamenting our situation in Afghanistan this Memorial Day, is trying to think more about marketing and how it relates also to character. Article after article on marketing that I've read and YouTube vlog promotion insists on emailing people about your vlog. I find this honestly really quite nerve-wracking, imagining how busy people might be and feeling like just one small voice in the wilderness, competing for 5 minutes of time from the email readers. But like snakeskin, my insecurities are in fact shedding, because I do believe sharing is paramount to worthwhile relationships, to healthy relationships. Telling each other, hey, here's what I'm up to, and what are you up to? Let's trade stories and feedback. So I vow to no longer feel ashamed of this mentality that I'm developing. After all, attitudes should be encouraging and constructive, not discouraging and destructive, right? Maybe you're wondering, why did I feel so ashamed of sharing my thoughts and trying to promote the sharing of my thoughts? As I've mentioned before, part of it has to do with how I used to view myself as utterly incompetent, but also sometimes I would get these daymares of people thinking I'm this awful, vain narcissist, thinking, who the hell does this O'Connor cat think he is? supposing his little contemplations are worth my time. It's not like he's going to make me rich, powerful, or healthier. This O'Connor guy is obsessed with himself. I really don't want to be perceived as self-obsessed, and I believe I'm not. I am obsessed with thoughts, though, as I mentioned yesterday, preserving them, polishing them, and sharing them. I think someone's got to do it, as I said, especially if we really value them. You know, these pieces of ourselves, our souls. So for me to treat this as vain or narcissistic, to me that seems, now that I think of it, illogical, inaccurate, etc. And so I can begin to feel more confident about all this and indulge in the fun of it. Of course, I know there is such a thing as excessive interest in oneself. That is narcissism and vanity. When you're allowing all of that to cloud your concern for the world around you. Unfortunately, like our President Donald Trump does. I'm not even sure how it doesn't occur to him that literally everything must be about him, and it's always about how he's the biggest, the greatest, the most of this or that. And it's like this obvious, oversimplistic con artist formula, BS thing. And how does he not know how obvious the nonsensicalness of what he says is and how it appears to the world? Or is it even worse? Is it the fact that he is utterly aware of this and he just doesn't care because he can get away with it? So why does it matter? Which is actually a more disturbing prospect, I wonder, now that I think of it. So where did this fear of becoming a narcissist actually come from? Yeah. So as a kid and a teenager, young adult, maybe it comes from having a low self-esteem in part. So like always feeling kind of inferior to people who seem to have such an ego. But I've always actually had a real distaste for the whole cockiness thing. People who seemed only to think of themselves as infallible. Again, President Trump would appear to serve as a most unfortunate example. These are the kind of people, I think, who seem to only find their own endeavors worth discussing. When I was a kid, this is another factor sort of playing into the evolution of the whole narcissism set of thoughts that I have. As a kid, I always tried so hard to be nice. In fact, that was so much so the way that I presented myself. I think I had a reputation to the extent that a teacher once, in my French class, I was in 6th grade, teacher made a joke of how shocked she was because I'd been talking and being a little disruptive that day. And she said, you, Mr. Goody Two-Shoe? And I never forgot being referred to as a Goody Two-Shoe. But as I got older, that label or that association of myself as a goody two-shoe or as a nice guy, and thinking about what is that expression? My friend Bernard and I were talking about this expression, nice guys finish last, right? To use that cliche phrase. Well, I would think about that and, am I finishing last? Am I so insecure and, not feeling like a success in life because I'm just too nice? And, in the midst of this, by the time I'm about 23, 24, I'm starting to think about self-esteem, self-confidence, positive thinking, and how important all of that is. And I really began forcing myself to possess self-confidence and to dispel all that negativity. And part of that was also not seeing myself as this nice guy, I think. And it just got to a point where I was probably a little bit full of myself and had an inflated ego. It really reached its prime during my Ayn Rand obsession phase, roughly 2011 to 2014 or so, I want to say. It was pretty awful. I thought of myself as a genius of philosophy who could come up with an answer for anything. And it turned me into an elitist. One time, it was awful, but it's true. I refused to attend a Christmas party because I was not a Christian, and I didn't want to corrupt my integrity by associating with people who hold such a incorrect and accurate belief. I didn't want my attendance at this party to suggest to them that I was condoning their religious beliefs. Yes, I was an elitist, I was a snob, I was pretentious, I was cocky, I was antisocial, I was an isolationist. And it was like this for several years. Even back in 2009, I guess it was, a brief time when Ashley and I lived in California, I remember telling someone I was going to save the world with my philosophy, is I think what I said. And I just had this inflated sense of how we were all goddesses and gods with these karmic thought powers responsible for the co-creation of the physical laws of the universe. And no one understood this quite the way I could. And so I was going to spell it out in such a way that was going to make me a best-selling philosophy writer. And along the way, I would just do some great mental manifestations of the world as it ought to be or something. I do not quite think that way anymore. Not quite. I don't really at all. I still don't subscribe to a religion. I'm not a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim or a Buddhist or what have you. But I do deeply cherish diversity of thought, freedom of thought, independent thought. I want people to think what they want to think and to try and make sense of it on their own by comparing it and contrasting to other thoughts out there. People should, of course, be able to believe what they want to believe. So, you want to make that, of course, perfectly clear. So I've been reading up as much as possible on all this marketing and self-promotion. Last night I was up actually till about 12:30 reading, which is probably the latest I've been up in about 6 months now. Because I'm just really super determined to enhance my marketing skills. It's something I believe I need, not just because I want my vlog to be a success, but because I really do care also about my political activism and having a message and being able to promote it effectively. And want to be able to actually make an impact. Moreover, I actually view marketing and self-promotion as just a reality of social life and a crucial element, therefore, of self-confidence. I don't think that our conversations need to be myopically fixated only on our business endeavors, so to speak, but I suppose one of my themes for today, probably a continuation of yesterday also, I enjoy commercials and ads, I was saying, right? And I enjoy how businesses are so much a part of who we are, the fantasies of our minds and the process of fruition. So to that end, I'm really determined not just to know how to market in the technical sense, but I really want to become knowledgeable and practiced in the development of some kind of theory of ethical and courteous marketing and integration of business into social interactions, whether the marketed thing is political, technological, artistic, etc., academic, financial. But my point is, I want to present myself in a most palatable, honest way. I believe one can do both. I don't believe one has to choose between bluntness and diplomacy. Also, I really want to appreciate what other people do. I really want to hear and understand what other people are about, and to become a good member of the community, a good neighbor, a good friend, a good human, a good participator in trade in this marketplace of products and ideas and things. So what have I learned so far in the last few days? One thing I learned was the importance of altering my YouTube layout, the channel. It comes recommended, I've read, that our playlists, some of them should be horizontal, others should be vertical. This helps the channel stand out in contrast to people who aren't as invested in their channel. I learned to write 1 to 3 sentences in my introductions, followed by explanations of what this channel is all about. I've learned that if I'm going to put texts in my thumbnails, the colors should be blue, green, orange, or yellow, according to one site I forget off the top of my head. So I've been trying to fix my thumbnails there. And I've got to tell you, I don't know what it is, but something has to be going right, because when I search now on YouTube for vlog or public comment, some of my videos are showing up on the top 10 search. This is actually shocking and unbelievable to me, honestly, because I've failed so much in life, from self-publishing a book to my runs for political office to my pursuit of a teaching assistantship. Not that any of that matters anymore, because I feel so beautifully free of that, so beyond it, so purely and just solely interested in talking to you and sharing these thoughts. It really is amazing how permitting myself freedom of thought is revolutionizing my sense of self. I just can't begin to tell you. Lately, I feel so cleaned up, so remade, so new, so fresh, so reborn. Part of it, I imagine, no doubt, is my anti-anxiety medication, my Effexor. But more so, keep in mind, this didn't happen when my medication first kicked in, not when the dosage was increased to where it's at now. This feeling that I have now really just started taking effect around the time that I started this blog, which is significant to me. It's just one of the most exceptional feelings doing this that I've ever had in my life. The only thing I can compare it to is the feeling of being with my wife, how that makes me feel, the purification, the cleanliness. I suppose another element of it all is just not having the burden of homework for college anymore, finally having my mind freed up to think on its own, instead of being compelled and burdened by due dates. Not that college was a bad thing. I loved it. It made me who I am now and taught me how to think critically and work harder than I ever had before. Still, it's nice to have more time to think on my own without worrying about some assignment due in 3 hours. And I'm finally free from worrying about whether some graduate school program is going to like me. I was really fixated on that. I don't know if I mentioned this to you before, but I wasted a lot of my damn time, a lot of mental energy just worrying about whether or not I'd amount to something because of getting or not getting a teaching assistantship at a grad school. I have nothing but adoration for the concept of academia. I don't know how I feel about it anymore as something that I'm supposed to be a part of. But certainly I don't feel that it's something I need to be involved in at this point in my life. And I think social media is redefining the community of information sharing in a huge way. So, there's just this real period of like just re-examination of things. Anyway, it was a little bit longer than I wanted it to be today, but I think I said everything that needed to be said, and that's what matters most of all, not how long or short something is, in my opinion. I just wanted to close then by saying two things. First of all, again, to our troops, it is Memorial Day, and it is worth taking pause and thinking about that. I'm sorry that this war is still going on, and my heart goes out to everyone affected. And certainly I want to see an end to this war. And I want to take a moment to say to my wife, Ashley, that I love you and that I am very grateful that you are so supportive of all of the efforts that go into this video blog. Because if it was not for you and your encouragement, this probably just couldn't be. So, you can never see what goes on in the background of things unless it's brought to light. I'm an extremely lucky fellow who has such a nice gal to say nice things and show a lot of patience as I try to put all of these videos together. So I just wanted to recognize my brilliant wife, Ashley O'Connor, smart nurse, smart person, really awesome person, beautiful. Okay, well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and I shall chat with you very, very soon. Have a great day, and bye.